Hi, and welcome to episode 2 of season 2 of SteamLUG Cast. My name is Cheese, and with us this week we have DerRidda.
Hello, people.
Swordfisher.
Hi there.
And special guest, Oliver Franzke from Double Fine.
Hello there.
Welcome, and how have you guys been? DerRidda, Swordfisher, you've been well?
Absolutely, I've been fantastic this week.
Marvelous.
Fantastic. So we're going to open up this episode with a little chat with Oliver about Double Fine's upcoming adventure game Broken Age, which should be publicly available mid to late next week, I think Thursday or something.
Actually, I think isn't it Tuesday? It's the 28th, whatever the 28th is.
Oh yeah, Tuesday, which is the 29th for those of us on the other side of the international dateline.
Yeah, sorry about that.
We have to wait a whole extra day. Right. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Oliver? Projects that you've worked on?
Sure, yeah. As you said, thanks for the introduction. I'm Oliver. I am originally from Germany. That's where I kind of started my career many, many years ago, working in the games industry, which is kind of something I always wanted to do. But through some steps, I eventually made it to Double Fine, where I've been working now for more than 3 years, 3.5 years maybe. And I contributed here to stacking and to Once Upon a Monster. I was the lead tech engineer there. I was the leading graphics programmer on The Cave. I also helped out Lee with Autonomous, the last Amnesia Fortnite project. And now I had the honor to be the lead programmer on Broken Age, which was like a super awesome project, like for me personally as well as for the company. So I'm very, very happy that it all turned out this way.
So you also worked on the special edition of Secret of Monkey Island, is that right?
Yes, just before joining Double Fine, I worked for LucasArts, which was a very interesting experience. And thankfully we were able, it was kind of a weird time, like the management was going through a whole bunch of like changes, but our team, or the team I worked on, used that for the better and like basically dug out the old Monkey Island code, and like just for fun we kind of started to see if we can get it running on mobile devices and stuff like that. And because of that, eventually it became the special edition versions. And yeah, like I was kind of like a systems/graphics programmer on that, and I was the one who implemented the kind of crossfade between the old game and new game, but it was suggested by the team. But this project it was very, very awesome for me, because Monkey Island is obviously one of my favorite games ever. So to be able to actually work on it was like a dream come true. And now working with Tim directly on an adventure game is another dream come true. So I'm as I said, I'm really, really honored and happy that it all turned out this way.
So that must be pretty cool to have on your resume. You've worked on Tim Schafer's newest point-and-click adventure game and his oldest one.
Yeah, it's true. Actually, when I came here for the interview, usually the way it goes, you kind of have a whole day where you talk to the entire company, or like, to a lot of people in the company. And at the end of the day, you talk to Tim. And, I was just sitting in a room waiting for Tim to come to talk to me. And he came in with his iPhone up and like, and saying, the first thing he said, like, hey, I'm playing your game. And I said, Tim, I think you're actually more like playing your own game there.
Do you think that point-and-click adventures have changed much over the past 20 years?
I would say so. I mean, it's been a part of the kind of discussion with the backers. Like, certainly, I think a lot of games kind of have streamlined the whole process. And actually, that's nothing like super new. I think even back in the old LucasArts days, the adventures became more streamlined in a way. Initially, it was just text-based, and graphics joined in, but you still had to actually type in sentences, like Yugo's House of Horror and stuff like that. But then that went away, made kind of visual verb selection, and then that was kind of simplified. So I think from a gameplay perspective, certainly over the last few years has been streamlined. Something like Machinarium as well. It's a good example for that. So I think that happened, and I think it's good. I don't know. I really prefer that kind of change. Like when I go back and play Monkey Island, sometimes it's a bit silly that you have to select specifically. Well, you can push up, pull something, or stuff like that. So I think those changes were good. And in addition to that, obviously, from a technical perspective, we made a lot of progress, and we can do way more now visually than we could do back then. And it's nice to be able to use that power to create a very immersive experience. So yeah.
It's really nice if you look at the last 20 years how adventure games have worked out. If you look at text adventures, then you go Monkey Island 1 with this wall of text, of buttons you could use to interact with the world, to Monkey Island 2 where they shrink them, and then 3, even though that's not the real Monkey Island 3, as we all know, you get these 3 button coins, and nowadays you have Amnesia where you are in a 3D world and just physically manipulating to the world to get to do what you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, initially, I think when adventure games started out, like especially text-based adventures, like how was the first text-based adventure? Was it like also called the Cave or something like that? It was part of kind of creating an experience where you, as a player, could project yourself into that situation. You had to kind of envision the world that was described through text in your mind, and then the immersion would work or break with kind of how the game would react to your sentences. And I remember, as a kid writing adventure games in BASIC, just pure text-based adventures. It was like super tricky, and you always would try to find like funny replies to something, but it's super hard to kind of cover all those things. And now, Amnesia is actually a very good example how they try to integrate it directly into the experience, and I think that works out pretty well. I think it's the way forward for sure.
It's interesting, even looking back, there are some point-and-click adventure games which had much more streamlined interfaces than what LucasArts was doing at the point in time. I think Sierra's was it Cocktail Vision, the Goblins series?
Oh yeah, Goblins. Totally forgot about that. That was an awesome game actually back then.
I love them. I
don't actually remember how you interacted with that. I must admit, I've totally forgot.
I think it was a single-click interface, similar to Broken Age or the Sam & Max games, like Telltale do.
Yeah, interesting. Man, I have to totally dig that out again now, because I remember back then I really, really loved the humor in that game. That was super awesome.
So, what would you call a typical day at Double Fine?
Usually I kind of come in. I'm usually one of the first people here, apart from Ray, our lead animator, and a couple of other people. Then there's a lot of just kind of checking up on email, kind of what happened so far. And I tend to actually these days, after the beta release, I tend to go on the forums and see if people are reporting bugs or have other kind of problems, so I can help them. And then it's just depending on where we are on the project, either looking at kind of the task list through our Scrum, or looking at the bug list and then just basically going in and trying to fix things. And once a week we have a whole company meeting, usually on Monday, where Tim and Justin, the business guy, talks about what's going on. That's generally for Double Fine, and all the project leads talk about what's going on with their projects. So that's pretty awesome. And once a week on Tuesday, at least for Broken Age, we have kind of like a stand-up meeting, which is from this kind of Scrum software development methodology, where everybody in the team talks about what they did the previous week and what they're trying to achieve this week, and if they have any problems or need any help with stuff. And we also, since we have a couple of people working remotely from New York and other parts of the world, kind of check in with them just to see them, on the screen through Hangouts. And yeah.
Yeah, cool. So Moe is Double Fine's first PC 2D game, is that correct?
Yes, so if the question is if Broken Age is the first 2D Double Fine game, then the answer is no, because we did actually do Flash games a while ago doing Brutal Legend. We had this, I think Double Fine, action games or something like that Tasha did. So I think those were actually the first one. And then also...
Hostmaster.
Yes, Hostmaster, for example, that was done by Mice, which is super awesome. Then we also had Middle Managed Justice, which actually came out obviously before us, which also used Moai. But yeah, I think we're kind of the first who's kind of going this in-between space between 2D and 3D, for sure.
I didn't realize that Middle Manager of Justice used Moai. Are there plans to do a PC version of that?
Are there plans? I think there are always plans. I don't know how specific they are and what's going on with that. It kind of depends on business decisions and kind of the availability of people and whether or not we can right now, or whether or not it makes sense to have those people working on other projects and stuff like that. And to be honest, I don't actually know what the latest status is of that. But I remember a while ago, we were just brainstorming about it, but I don't think it ever really got beyond that stage. But let's hope. One can always hope.
Yeah, fingers crossed. So, obviously, people who haven't backed the project don't have quite as much of an insight into the process that's been going on. Would you feel comfortable talking about the selection process that you went through when choosing Moe as the engine to use for the Double Fine adventure?
Absolutely. Right, and that's actually a very good point. So, I mean, it all started obviously a year and a half ago now, probably a bit more, after the Kickstarter finished. And at this time, traditionally we've been making games with our internal Buddha engine, which we use for Brutal Legend and Stacking and Costume Quest and all those games. And, since that engine was developed for Brutal Legend specifically, it's kind of a technology that's very good at kind of making open world games and big kind of 3D kind of action games. Now, we looked at it, once Kickstarter completed, in terms of whether or not we could achieve this game with that engine. And sadly, back then, the answer was no. And it was mostly because it was a big, complicated 3D engine, so actually getting anything kind of 2D-ish into it would have meant a lot of work. But more importantly, part of the main problem was that Buddha at this time did not actually work on mobile devices. And, mobile devices were promised as part of the Kickstarter rewards. And actually even Linux, although we had shipped games with it or were working on bringing Brutal Legend and Stacking and stuff like that to Linux as well. But we didn't really internally have the pipeline to make this work. So there were a lot of things that we just looked at it and kind of thought about the tech investment that needs to happen to make Broken Age, as a 2D or 2.5D adventure game with that technology base. And it just seemed like it would mean a lot of man hours that need to be invested, and we didn't feel comfortable making that decision. And at the same time, we had just made some experiences with the Moai engine through the Amnesia Fortnite projects. In fact, I worked with Key on the Middle Manager of Justice Amnesia Fortnite project, which used Moai. And we were all pretty impressed how quick and easy it was to make 2D games. So based on that experience, and since we were already kind of in production with Middle Manager of Justice, we said, okay, we probably going to move forward with Moai. And we had full source code access to it and stuff like that. So all the signs were there. And Moai already supported Linux and already supported Android and iPhone or iOS. So basically, it already, in theory, was working on all the platforms that we want to be on. And that's kind of the long story how we ended up with Moai for Broken Age.
So let me interject here for a second. Do you already plan to port Brutal Legend to Linux before the Kickstarter went through?
It was, usually we are planning ahead, and it certainly was on our radar, and I'm not sure, it's been such a long time, so I'm not sure how specific those plans were, but I'm sure we were thinking about it, but we hadn't actually done any kind of specific work towards that goal at this point.
All right.
So Moai, I'm going to mess it up every time. Being open source, you guys are also doing upstream contribution to that. How's that been going?
Yes, actually, we have done upstream contribution. It's been pretty good. It's right now, let's say right now it's a bit more tricky than it was a year ago. And mostly the reason for that is that Zipline, the company that initially developed this technology, has unfortunately run into a bit of trouble, and they are running it like a skeleton crew at this point. And previously we had pretty awesome people helping us with the kind of upstream integration. Even back then, the way it worked, and that was agreement, between Zipline and us, is that we just gonna give them packages of code and then they can integrate it back into their mainline. And that made sense mostly because for us making this project, we cannot constantly upgrade or integrate the mainline just because, we have milestones that we need to deliver, and, it's kind of risky, integrating changes to the engine, all the time. So basically we said, well, we're going to integrate from the mainline into our branch at our speed, and but we do want to share with you. And so the way it's going to work, we're going to basically give you our code, and then you can integrate into Moai mainline what you think makes most sense to you. And that's how it's been. And actually, I just a few weeks ago, or maybe, I don't know, months ago or so, I looked at the mainline and I did find a whole bunch of things from us, which made me very happy. Unfortunately, I don't really have time very often to check back in and see what's in there and not. And I also helped out. I think someone on Twitter contacted me that they wanted to have some code regarding or connected to the skeleton mesh kind of stuff. So I helped them with that stuff.
So you guys have been moving over the past couple of years now, I guess, towards supporting more platforms than Double Fine previously had. Has that been accompanied by any notable hurdles? Has Linux proven to be a particularly pleasant one of the set to approach?
First of all, you're absolutely right. Our goal, certainly through the last couple of years and even going forward, is to be on more platforms. And, that's partly obviously connected to the fact that we do want to kind of become more independent from publishers, which means that, we have to kind of explore different distribution models or like distribution channels, which are, multiple platforms is always a good way of doing that. And as far as Linux goes, it actually, I gotta say, it was one of the more easy ones to get going. Thankfully, I already had the general infrastructure to create more builds ready, and we basically took that and adapted it to us. Since Linux, is an operating system that, in the end of the day, runs on very similar hardware than even Mac or Windows, it was pretty easy to get the actual final integration going. And we didn't really have many very specific Linux problems. And some of the problems we had recently were not connected to Linux per se, but more to like Steam, the Steam specific things, because they want to basically make sure that you build your game in a very special way to be like maximum compatible with the different distributions, and that caused a bit of trouble for us for a while, but I think we figured it all out, and I'm actually pretty happy with it, and I learned a lot. I gotta say, and I mentioned that to Cheese before we did this podcast, that personally, it's been a long time for me since I actually worked in a serious fashion with Linux, probably since university. So I was a bit kind of out of practice. But I have certainly learned a lot of things recently, and I've learned how to use GDP properly and stuff like that. So it's good to to learn something. And at the end of the day, that's kind of what I really hope for in my job, or what I really appreciate about my job, is to learn something new every day, and that certainly helped. But yeah, overall, I'm super happy with Linux.
And it's nice to see some of that learning, or it seems like some of that learning has come to bear on other projects like Space Base DF9, which had Linux support as soon as the alpha became available to support us.
Yeah, actually, that is thanks to one of our awesome programmers, Ben Burbank, who literally hacked that together at the last minute, because initially it wasn't planned, but it totally worked out. And we certainly benefited from that as well. Just for us as a company, we're kind of collectively learning how to support those different platforms. And if a certain project fixes issues, then obviously that's that's going to be integrated into other projects. And we're generally trying to help us out, and we're all buddies here. So yeah.
So the 2HB utility that you guys have been creating whilst working on Broken Age, presumably other projects as well. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, it would be better to have Brandon here, since he wrote a lot of that stuff. He did a fantastic job at that. Yeah, so basically, 2HB. What is 2HB? 2HB stands for Two-Headed Baby, which is the logo of Double Fine, and it is basically an initiative within the company to create a game editor, or a game creation tool framework. Not quite on the same level that Unity, where Unity is, or Unreal with the Unreal editor and stuff like that, but certainly for us. During the last couple of years, we had a lot of integration into Autodesk Maya and kind of other kind of tools. But there comes a point when, it's kind of running out of steam, and you kind of have to invest into new tools. And so 2HB was that effort to create a generalized game creation framework or debugging framework that then can be used by different projects. And Broken Age was the first one to use it, as we were the ones who were actually developing it. The way we use it, it's like a multifunctional tool. First of all, it allows you basically to see the scenes in Broken Age in the editor. So, just like in Unity, you basically have a viewport and you see the scene, you see all kind of other debug wireframe things that represent different parts of the scene, and you can move things around. You've got undo, all the things you kind of want. In addition to that, it allows you to author some of the gameplay logic that is happening through either data manipulation or through actually writing Lua scripts within that editor. And one really, really nice thing about 2HB is that you can run the game through the editor, and it will automatically attach our own Lua debugger to the game, so that we can basically step through the gameplay code and see if something goes wrong. We can do very deep analysis of what's going on, and it helped us from a productivity point a lot to make this game happen. And now, obviously other projects are using this, like Space Base is a good example, and as I said earlier, even other projects within the company are now, investing in trying to integrate that tool and this framework into their pipelines. And it will take a little bit of time until that's fully done, but that's kind of what we're hoping for in the long term.
Earlier in the Double Fine Adventure or Broken Ages history, there was a thread in the backer only forums where somebody had asked whether or not there were plans to. Oh, actually, no. Sorry, I think it may have been said that there were plans to release 2HB as an open source project. Do you think that there's still a likelihood of that happening?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we have. So yeah, we talked about it, and I think it's certainly also no real secret, and we're definitely still planning to do that. With all of those things, it's usually kind of a problem of time, because Brandon has moved on to his own project. It's been announced like Hack and Slash is becoming an official project in Double Fine, so he's got his own project now, and we obviously were busy making Broken Age. And the thing is, before we can open source it, we need to detach it a bit from kind of our own tech to some degree. Like we need to have another look at it and kind of make sure that all the abstractions are there and they make sense to be integrated and be used by somebody else. And that is something that's on our radar, and we need to find some time to actually make that happen. But yes, it is by no means an idea that we kind of abandoned. It's still very much in the back of our heads, and we do want to make this happen. Absolutely. I just don't know exactly when, and I wish I could give you a way more specific answer than that.
So these things take time, and they've got to be matched in with amongst the schedule that you've got for other stuff that go on. So you can patiently wait for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my hope would be that we could contribute or work together maybe with another indie game studio and let them use it, and then see kind of what the problems are integrating it into a different pipeline. And then, my hope personally would be to kind of learn a lot of things from that. And then once we have that experience, it would be probably pretty easy to refactor the tool and get it out there.
So Broken Age has been a much more open development project than previous stuff that Double Fine has done, and judging from the way that Massive Chalice worked and the 2012 Amnesia Fortnight worked, it seems like having a more open approach to development or a more transparent approach is something that you guys are likely to continue moving forward with. Do you think that that's changed the way that you guys interact with the community? Do you feel like you are personally interacting more with community people than you would have previously on other projects?
Yes. Yeah. So I mean, okay. So yes, I'm gonna come back to this very specific question. Like as a kind of context, for me personally, this was a very big revolution, to see that you can actually interact with your community and your players directly, and it's no problem. Previously, in other companies I worked before, this was like an absolute no-no. Like you were not allowed to talk to anybody out there about what you're doing and about the project, and it's just this was like kind of restricted to people in the PR department and community managers. Like as an actual team member, you were not allowed to help out. And for me, that was in a way a very big change to kind of go into this very open development process and be very open about the tech decisions that we're making, about the art decisions, talking a lot about things. Being in a documentary was very, very weird in the beginning, like having cameras around you, if you're not used to that, is certainly very weird. I think now, after so much time, no one in the team actually really cares about it anymore. Like people completely ignore that kind of stuff, where initially people would kind of awkwardly look towards the camera and stuff like that, but people have gotten used to that. And more recently, actually, what I really enjoyed is after we released Broken Age to the backers, I was actually able to personally interact with people that had problems with the game and compatibility issues, and actually, send them emails and trying to help them out and trying to solve their problems. And we were able to do that, and it's really nice to have this very, very personal interaction, because a lot of people I don't think are used to that. Like if you're buying a game from a big publisher, and I'm not going to name any names, if you have any tech problems, you're out of luck. And I remember many, many years ago, I had an old laptop or something like that, and I don't know, I bought Mass Effect, and I tried to run it, didn't work, and I tried to figure out how to fix it, and this was just absolute nightmare, figuring it out. And, here people are, sometimes you run into people who are like very negative, like, oh, this is really bad, and it really sucks, and, I can't believe that's the way it is. But then you reach out to those people personally, and you show that you care, that they can't run the game, that you do want to help them to make things work, and they become like completely changed, and like they're really appreciative of you helping out, and I really like that interaction with the community and being so close, and talking in the end of the day, talking to the people who like what we're doing, and kind of those are the people that we're making those games for. So yeah, I think I personally like it a lot, and I think a lot of people on the team are certainly also huge fans of this approach.
I have to say I am. It's really been really nice to not only through the documentary get a glimpse into the development process that you guys have had, but also to be able to reach out to you guys individually and say hi and or say thanks for stuff or ask questions or just recognize that there are humans at work behind the games as well.
Yeah, I think that was a big part. Like, I came to a realization that a big part of this documentary is, in a way to kind of humanize game development, because very often it's a very opaque thing. If you're making a big game like, Halo or an Assassin's Creed, it's such a big project that I haven't worked on those projects personally, but I know from a personal experience working on bigger projects is sometimes difficult to kind of feel very personally attached to that, because there's so many people that are involved, and like you sometimes feel like your contribution that you're doing is actually, in the end of the day, not very, very important. And that is certainly extremely different here. And it is awesome. It is really good. Like, I think a lot of people appreciate that feeling that what they're doing is really important, and, being able to talk to people. And, it has benefits and drawbacks as well. With all the positive praise and nice people you meet and stuff like that comes also the kind of blowback if there are very negative voices out there, and that can be really challenging. And I think for me in the beginning, when we started this Broken Age, and I was writing blog posts on the forum about tech decisions, and I remember my first technical blog post where I had like an image in there. The first response was like, oh, this looks stupid, or something like that. And it was like, program out. I just went into Maya, I created like Redbud and like some other kind of test temp assets and put them in there just, from a technical perspective to get going. And I even put a disclaimer in the post saying that this is program out, this has nothing to do with the actual project. So, no comments on that, please. But obviously that's the first thing that happened. And, that can be a bit draining sometimes, but I think I got used to it now, and it's, you have to develop a filter, and sometimes it's, people they don't really want to attack you personally, what you're doing. It's just they're unhappy because of other reasons that are completely out of your control, and you just have to accept this. But yeah.
I think some of it has to do with that the players themselves are also now just learning how it is to play around in open development. They think they have to yell at the forums that stuff isn't working because they always had to yell at forums, or when big publisher games were the problem. And now they find out, no, we don't have to yell at the forums anymore. There are people that care about their project and they help us. And when they see programmer art, you would usually never see programmer art in a AAA game because they control their marketing strategy so much to prevent these reactions. So people think they have to judge everything they see, or what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I very much agree. And people are definitely not used and trained to seeing like intermediate stages of a game development process. Or a lot of people who do know are game developers themselves, either professionally or in the kind of indie context. And for us, I think a lot of our backers are actually also involved with game development, either as professional game developers or making their own indie games. And people like that can understand what's going on, and they will also immediately jump to your help and say like, well, you don't understand. This is like kind of intermediate artwork, and this will change, and it's just a test and stuff like that. So there are people out there that do understand. It's just a matter of educating the rest of the community to kind of see the potential rather than what's actually there right now. And I think people are learning, and people kind of doing the process of making this game on the forums became way more like appreciative and positive about all the forum posts, and people feel like they can also voice their concerns. And that's another thing, like it doesn't mean that we are perfect and we make no mistakes, but I think what we try to do is if somebody has a concern about, an art style or, I don't know, a technical feature, and we do try to go in and like explain why we made that decision and why it makes sense in our context. And I think also that helps people to understand that, if you see something, it's not necessarily, black or white, but there are like some gradients in between that. And sometimes it's, those decisions are made based on some design decision that you probably are not aware of or something like that. So it's good. I really learned a lot doing this process, and I hope, that backers really like this kind of the documentary and like being part of this experience. And I think most people do.
Yeah, the response seems to have been fairly overwhelmingly positive. And one thing that I find interesting as well with the open development model is that not only does it give gamers as consumers a chance to understand the ins and outs of what goes on, but it also creates a dialogue, I guess, through which game developers can see how other people do things in a context that doesn't require as close or deeper personal relationship as you would need to get a look into a big closed project.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
So with the documentary, have you found it easy, hard to work? And you kind of already touched on this a little bit. You've got 90,000 people looking over your shoulder while you work. Does that create a kind of a pressure that you wouldn't normally have otherwise? And kind of how do you deal with that if so?
I don't think anymore. As I said earlier in the beginning, very much it was very, very strange. I think probably for everybody in the team. Maybe not for Tim, because Tim is used to being in front of cameras and communicating with people directly. But I think for a lot of people in the team, that was a very new experience. And in the beginning, you go through different stages where you're trying to be overly careful what you say and do and make sure nothing goes wrong, and then you really beat yourself up if you did something silly in front of the camera. But I think that has changed. Well, first of all, the 2-player production guys are super awesome dudes, and we're all friends. And I mean, it's not that they like bias the documentary in anything, but it's nice to know the people who are shooting that stuff. Like if it would be somebody that we don't know and only comes in every once in a while, probably be different. But since we have them here a lot, it certainly helps. And I think also now everybody's so used to this, and in fact the entire company has been kind of adjusted to that. Since Amnesia Fortnite was very open, and Massive Chalice has like weekly streams, or like, I don't know, not weekly, but they have like regular streams and stuff like that. I think people are kind of used to this kind of more broadcasty approach to game development. And I don't even notice anymore. Like sometimes I want to get up out of my chair, and I didn't even realize that one of the 2-player production guys is standing behind me with a tripod and like filming what I'm doing on the screen, and it's kind of awkward. But most of the time, it's just they really blended into our development, which is nice, because I feel like actually it kind of actually makes this development process way more authentic, because as soon as people don't realize that the cameras aren't there anymore, like they wouldn't hold back and wouldn't change their behavior. So it actually makes it kind of more realistic in a way.
Yeah, I've noticed that the later episodes seem to have a lot more people being themselves.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's natural. It's an adjustment process that is kind of happening for everyone, for sure. And we also have members or people here in the company that do not feel comfortable to be on camera, and we totally respect that decision as well. And then we just make sure that they don't get this exposure. So it's up to everyone whether or not they feel comfortable being in front of the cameras or not.
And one other question I had about kind of having 90,000 beta testers for the game, has having such a large and broad number of people poking around with a pre-release game, has that changed the way that you prioritize bug fixes, particularly when it comes to cosmetic things, the things that people notice often and frequently? Do they become something that you would fix sooner than you would in a more closed context?
That's a very good question. I would say so, yes, definitely. So I can talk from different perspectives. First of all, for me, since I'm kind of the systems programmer, or largely programmer, like doing a lot of kind of systemy things, like making sure it runs on all the operating systems and there are no crashes, it was really important for me, for sure. Because my main my main drive was to make sure that everybody can play the game as soon as possible. And people who had problems, for me that was actually personally really difficult because we did actually do some compatibility testing with a QA company, but unfortunately it didn't catch some of the more common cases, which was very unfortunate. So I was a bit disappointed when so many people had not so many, but there were some people who with ADI graphics got had problems, for example, and so it was really important for me to go in and try to resolve these issues as quickly as possible. Certainly change the priorities there, because that, a crash is always more important than fixing a pop here and there. And I think the other thing is for artists, they had their own list, but if a lot of people notice something, then they too feel very much attached to this project and to the artwork they created, and they want to make sure that people see the best way. And sometimes, we've been staring at that game for such a long time now. Sometimes it's hard to kind of have perspective and see what people might find annoying or polished enough. And then to get some new eyes on it certainly helps to kind of adjust the priorities.
So you mentioned Redbot, the placeholder art that you had in some of the early engine tests that you were doing. Now, he also made an appearance in your Amnesia Fortnite 2012 pitch. Are we likely to see more of him in the future?
Well, I would like to, for sure. I'm still bringing it up, and Tim still mentions it every once in a while. But there are no official plans for Redbot, unfortunately, at this point. But I'm still trying to convince the artist to sneak him into Broken Age somewhere. But maybe that will happen. I hope so.
Yeah, I was going to say I hadn't noticed him yet.
I haven't noticed him anywhere. But actually, he did make an appearance in another game, and that game was Autonomous. He was actually in Autonomous as the 3D models. So.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Do you think that we're likely to see Linux support for Autonomous at some stage in the future?
We would like to. The problem is that right now, the company is we have a lot of projects and we literally need every person to work on very important stuff. So right now, unfortunately, making the Amnesia Fortnite projects run on Linux is not one of our priorities, although we did do initial push after AF 2012, but it came up with problems and people had to unfortunately just move on and work on other things. Now, having said that, since we are making more and more of a tech run on different platforms, right off the bat, the hope is certainly that going forward there would be something we can do more easily. But to put things in perspective, we as a games development company, we are using Windows as our main authoring operating system, and we've been doing so for a very long time. And maybe some people don't realize how much man-month and man-years go into pipeline development and tools development, and it's very unrealistic to assume that you could easily switch those over to a different operating system. Now, having said that, 2HP is actually implemented in Python based on Qt. So the chances to have 2HP running on Linux at some point are actually way better than our previous toolset, which was based a lot around C#. So yeah, let's hope so. It would be nice. But as Autonomous goes, I don't think so anytime soon. But yeah, maybe if it becomes a real big project, then certainly it will happen. But until then, probably not, unfortunately.
That's fair enough. I'm kind of hopeful that Autonomous will continue to grow into a larger project. Be nice to have it locally, especially something with Leap Motion support. It seems very hard to come by Linux compatible stuff at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I know that Lee really wants to make Autonomous into a big project, and I really love working on a project. It was so much fun. And in a way, we're kind of actually lucky that we could proceed or go forward with the project through Leap, because they basically offered us a deal to make it run with Leap controls, so we could actually make gameplay improvements and stuff like that, and we're very grateful for this opportunity. And so it's still there, and I'm sure we will pitch it, and it's certainly one of the projects that's very polished and got a lot more attention than some of the other projects on AF. So I wouldn't completely put it out of the realm of possibility that this will eventually make it into a real game, which would be pretty awesome.
So the Amnesia Fortnite process, do you mind just describing what that is?
Yes, absolutely. Amnesia Fortnite is a time here Double Fine, which goes for a fortnight, so 2 weeks, where basically all development on all the kind of official projects stops, and people work on prototypes for games, and everybody in the company can pitch a game. Literally everybody. You can be an artist, a programmer, a producer, a business guy, an IT person, doesn't matter. Everybody can pitch a game. And then in the past, the way it worked is that Tim actually picked which kind of pitches are most promising ones, and then we ended up like making 4 or 5 of those prototypes, and so the company basically gets split up into like smaller teams, and within 2 weeks the goal is to create a fully functional prototype, and that's kind of a very actually complete experience. So not just there's one level and it crashes at the end. It's actually supposed to have some kind of menu and like some kind of flow to it, like almost like a mini project. Now with Amnesia Fortnight 2012 specifically, we went for a more open process, and we actually figured, people might find that actually pretty interesting. And, with our experience from Broken Age, we said, okay, well, people can vote for the kind of projects they want to do, and we're going to have live streams, and we're going to have a documentary following those prototypes for the 2 weeks. And that's what happened with that. And, very often the goal for those prototypes is obviously to become Double Fine projects in the future, and that worked out really, really well for Double Fine. In fact, I would say without Amnesia Fortnight, Double Fine may not be around anymore. Because after Brutal Legend, we had this really weird time where we kind of were hoping for a bigger project to come up, but then it didn't happen because of different reasons. And because we had like those prototypes already there, people could jump in and make Costume Quest and Stacking and Once Upon a Monster and Middle Mansion of Justice and Space Base and Hack and Slash. Like, just, it's crazy how many actual Double Fine projects came out of this process. And it's pretty awesome that we're doing this and that it works out the way it does. And it's certainly, a time that is very joyful and very pretty awesome to make games, a small little game for 2 weeks and do something completely different than what you would usually do. So yeah, that's Amnesia Fortnight in a nutshell.
Do you think that having kind of larger scale prototyping sessions like that have changed the way that you approach prototyping in general?
Prototyping in general. Well, the thing is, that's a very tricky question, because I think most of the projects really came out of that, and I think, so maybe one project that didn't come out of Amnesia Fortnight is obviously Broken Age, and the way we approached it there, well, it had also more eyes on it to the backers, so it's actually kind of difficult to say. But I think, we generally speaking for prototyping, we do tend to, get other people in the company to play the games first in the prototypes. So we have like multiple stages of prototyping. Usually we make a prototype, then everybody in the company can play that prototype, usually in something that's called the Hour of Fun, or HOF. And if there's alcohol involved, then it's called the Hofbräu. So people can basically play those games, and then we all gather around in our big meeting room and we discuss kind of the experience and kind of what we liked and what we didn't like, what needs to be improved. And then once we get to that stage, we do tend to have like a family and friends kind of prototyping sessions where we just, get in buddies we know, or like family members, and let them play the game and kind of just get kind of feedback on what they find challenging or things like this. And I think that helped us from a prototyping perspective to kind of like iterate much quicker on those titles, rather than going through this very kind of traditional game development process where you kind of start, with pre-production and then you figure out what the game is, and you're kind of very rigid on the design and other things. So yeah.
And have you had a chance to play Act 1 in full as it stands at the moment, or have you been sort of too deep in development to step back and do that?
That is also an extremely good question. And sadly, and I'm really ashamed, I have actually not played the game from beginning to end. I mean, obviously, I know all the parts, I know all the puzzles, but I didn't have time to actually play the game. Because, the last, I would say, month or 2 months were extremely busy for the team and, for me specifically, just trying to make, to run all different platforms and things like that and deal with crashes. And, there's always a bit crunch involved before a project comes out, and that's natural, and if it wouldn't be like that, it would actually be kind of worrying. So that happened before the launch, and then after launch we had compatibility issues with crashes, so I was trying to work as much as I can to resolve those, and thankfully we were able to fix most of them. So now it's kind of quieting down a little bit, and so now I hopefully will actually have some time to play the game. And I'm always impressed because I'm so deep in tech stuff very often that just looking at the art and looking at what Lydia did with the visual effects and stuff like that just blows me completely away, because I see scenes like, maybe once a week, and the amount of work that goes in a week is really mind-boggling, and the kind of stuff the artists will manage to pull off is just really, really impressive. So yeah, I'm actually looking forward to play the game.
How would you go about describing Broken Age to somebody who hadn't heard about it before? How would you convince them to take a look at it when it becomes released next week?
Oh, that's an unfair question for a programmer. I think Broken Age is and I know people don't like that phrase, but I would say it's an interactive story about a teenage boy and girl, and kind of about their problems of coming of age, and kind of looking at their context of their family and kind of their lives, and kind of discovering maybe that there's some other things out there that need to be done, and like also realizing that maybe there you have some responsibilities yourself, and like maybe some of the things that your parents did that you think they're stupid are maybe not all that stupid, or something like that. So yeah, I would say it's an interactive story about coming of age, and it's very funny, as with all of Tim's games, so I can only highly recommend it, and I'm not just saying that because I have programmed it.
I've had the chance to play it a bit. I think I'm on my way to my 4th playthrough now, and yeah, it's I find it really enjoyable. When part of me would describe it as a classic point-and-click adventure. If you move UI concerns aside, it has a lot in common. There is certainly the DNA of a lot of the classic LucasArts point-and-click adventures in there. But it also does bring that new UI to the mix, and it's not as horrendously difficult as some of the older stuff has been in the past. But sometimes that's not necessarily the best way to go. I mean, I appreciate that kind of difficulty personally, but it's got to be right for the project,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that's a concern that obviously came up a lot during the last couple of 2 weeks. And I know that Tim will address that. It's something that, we're very aware of. So I wouldn't, don't worry. Everything will be good.
So we might look at wrapping up the interview portion of the cast there. Is there anything else you want to add? DerRidda, Swordfisher, is there anything else that you guys want to ask?
Nope, you have basically stolen my one opportunity to ask him for the elevator pitch just a moment ago.
Sorry.
No problem.
Yeah, I got nothing.
Alright. Is there anything you want to add, Oliver?
Well, just thanks, guys, to inviting me to this. It was very fun, and obviously also huge props out to the Reds team, and specifically my programming team. I'm personally, super, super proud of what we achieved, and I could have hoped for a better opportunity and for a better team. So I'm very happy with what we achieved, and I'm looking forward to, obviously continue working on it and getting Act 2 done, and then, getting the whole experience out there. So I'm super excited.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for joining us. You're more than welcome to hang around and comment on anything else for the rest of the show if you have time.
Cool. Thank you. I actually, unfortunately, have to run because we're still obviously getting ready for Tuesday, and I have to upload a patch.
Of course. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Pass on our best to the rest of the team, and thanks for Linux support.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, and maybe we can repeat it at some point.
Sounds good.
So yeah, should we move on to SteamLUG community stuff?
Let's do it. Past events. Tell us about past events, Swordfisher.
Well, we've done some Guns of Icarus online, which seems to be a frequent one.
Man, I love that game.
Yeah, I haven't played it yet, so.
Oh, you have it? Do you have it?
Yeah, I do. I bought the 4-pack, I think, and gave it to some of the guys from SteamLUG. Oh,
nice. You're going to have to join us at some stage. At the last event, we fielded 3 full SteamLUG crews, if I remember correctly, in 3v3 matches, and that became a really interesting game where we had 3 SteamLUG captains who were all kind of coordinating together against other players, random players from around the world. It was fun.
That's nice.
Did you get to captain a ship, DerRidda? I think you were there for that.
I am not currently captaining because I still have my outstanding Unity engine issues and I always freeze when I'm looking around, which is not good while you're captaining a ship. So I played a monkey wrench, usually, mechanic, and I just kept leaping about the ship and fixing whatever the bot we had on the ship didn't fix, which was everything.
But yeah, that event was fun. It went well.
And you guys also had a Nuclear Dawn bug hunt. How did that go?
Yeah, we fired up the beta. We had a beta server donated by Xeno Games. They actually provide us with 3 servers in case we got full. I think we ended up filling 1.5, but they quickly settled down into 1 full server. And we played for, I think it was 4 hours, 5 hours maybe. It was pretty good. It was great to get your Linux players together and give them a chance to get familiar with the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. The game itself is pretty solid.
Did you find any bugs?
Nah, not really.
What a shame. We should do it again then.
I did spot one when we were preparing for the event. There's an issue where sometimes some of the HUD elements don't show, so you don't see like the commander orders. So when the commander player issues capture this point type things, or defend this position, some of the first person people don't see that on their HUD, and it's hard to know exactly when that happens. It doesn't seem to happen all the time, but we reported that, and we'll see if that goes anywhere.
Yeah, that's really tough. If you don't find any bugs, you have to settle for having fun. I mean, who would want that?
We also had a Left 4 Dead 2 event, which I didn't get a chance to attend.
I sadly also missed that one, because I was busy around that weekend. That meant I sadly also missed our next event, which was No More Room in Hell.
Yeah, I had to catch up on some sleep during that one as well. Did you manage to get into that one at all, Swordfisher?
No.
I know you were sad to have missed out on the first one.
I think I'm the worst event coordinator ever. I never get to play any of the events I coordinate.
We just had someone in chat say that the No More Room in Hell event was nice. So I hope that everybody had fun, and we'll probably come back and play that some more at some stage in the future.
Yeah. As long as people have a nice experience, I'm okay.
Yeah, for sure. So as far as upcoming events go, what have we got on the plate at the moment?
Well, after the cast, we're gonna play Brutal Legend.
Ooh, that's gonna be fun.
Yeah, we planned to do this last year, but we didn't get to it. So this will be the early October event. Very early.
Or pretty damn late October, more like.
No, it's very early.
That's what I started with. I started with late, but somebody decided that early would be a little bit more positive, so we're totally way early. That's what it is.
Between Rocktobers.
I like it. But since it doesn't have cross-platform multiplayer, this is going to be an opportunity for people who might not otherwise have had a chance to play with other people. So hopefully we'll get to have some fun and people get familiar with the game.
Yeah.
And we also have Painkiller Hell and Damnation coming up tomorrow as well.
Yeah, on the 25th. And I'm still in the process of setting up a Windows server because the Linux version hasn't been ported yet.
Isn't that the only thing Unreal Engine actually has for Linux, server builds? Or does it also not have any server builds by default?
Is that an Unreal title?
Isn't it? I think it is.
Oh yeah, it's Painkiller UE3.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yep.
I didn't realize.
Well, it catches the shaders when the game launches, so it has a long startup time.
Yeah, fair enough. Like natural selection, I think does the same. Has a fairly lengthy startup time as well.
I prefer having my loading time when I'm starting the first game instead of before I launch the game itself.
Yeah.
So you don't have to wait for the game to start to the menu and then decide I'm not going to play this anyway.
So we're going to get our February events in order probably over the next week and get people up to speed on what we've got on there.
Yeah, and of course, if anyone has any suggestions, you're welcome to message us on SteamLUG or here on Mumble or on Twitter or the Steam forums or wherever you can contact us.
Yeah, definitely. We're often always contactable. If you need to, send an email to cast@steamlug.org and we'll get it. Moving on to other community stuff, especially on the note of Double Fine as well. For the Double Fine Game Club, we're currently playing Festa Mud, Curse of the Gold, which is a Linux-compatible point-and-click adventure, which is meant to be a bit of a love letter to some of the older style, LucasArts point-and-click adventures. We've had developers Josh Mandel and Paavo Harkonen join us last week, and they're both going to be with us again this coming week. So if anybody's interested in joining us to chat about that game, feel free. I'm going to gratuitously mention some fan art that I did of Tokitori 2, which has just been released for Linux. That's a fun game. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to play it.
Oh yeah, okay. I thought you meant that your fan art has been released for Linux.
Oh yeah. I just released it for Linux. It's been out on Windows and Mac for some time.
Yeah, previously it was an HLSL shader only, and now we can have it in OpenGL.
Dear. Moving on, Ye Olde SteamOSe, depending upon how you want to pronounce that, is a project that I hadn't heard of before, but is allowing people to install SteamOS on older hardware that doesn't support UEFI. DirectX is someone who hangs around in our community, so it's really nice to see people doing this sort of stuff. It's nice to see some SteamOS derivatives as well happening there. But as we move on to Steam and Valve news, Meklu's telling me that it was announced on SteamLUG and I never knew about it. But that's fine, these things happen. This project has also been incorporated back upstream into SteamOS, and Valve are now providing a non-UEFI installer. So yeah, that's pretty exciting. Have you guys had a chance to check that out before? Are you aware of it?
Yeah. I've tried the early versions, tried for my little PC I have here, and it worked flawlessly. So I was pretty happy with it.
Now, I sadly don't have any spare hardware I could reasonably try this out with.
So looking at more Valve and Steam news, obviously the big thing that's just recently happened has been Steam Dev Days. You guys been following on with that?
I've had a Twitter stream up for the Steam Dev Days hashtag, and I love how people keep retweeting the same tweets 24 hours after they were originally tweeted, thinking anybody who cares doesn't know yet. But yeah, there was some pretty interesting stuff going on there.
So I wrote a nice kind of Linux and Valve-oriented summary for the Steam group, if anybody hasn't seen that.
Yeah. But what do you guys think about what came out of Steam Dev Days, especially that the controller changes they made?
What they did wasn't it just to disable the touch thingy in the middle or something?
They practically completely scrapped that and added 2 4-button configurations like a D-pad and ABXY pad on a regular controller for pretty much any console out there. And there's now nothing in the middle, and it's still a work in progress, so they will continue to change that version, but the touchscreen is completely gone.
I want a drink holder in the middle.
It's still a prototype though, like that's open to change, open to see what's going on. Could take a different form down the track. And I think if removing the touchscreen makes it cheaper and easier for them to get the more innovative aspects of the controller out there into people's hands, then future revisions might end up having that. And that kind of feels like it could be a positive thing anyway.
They should have a hackable GPIO or something there, so you could add whatever you wanted, like the Raspberry Pi.
Well, I think that's kind of what they have in mind when they announced the controller. They said it was going to be moddable, and they were hoping that people would pull them apart and change them. So it'll be interesting to see what goes on from there. Some other big things that came out of the Steam Dev Day stuff was the new VOGL OpenGL debugger / tracer, which I think Gabe had kind of hinted at. I don't remember exactly when it was, but I remember him standing on stage talking about how they were doing some debugger stuff.
What does it stand for? Is it Valve or Veil, whatever, OpenGL or?
Yeah, I think it probably just stands for Valve. I don't know. I haven't seen.
I keep calling it Focal. I don't know why. Like a German V.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I think the really important news is that it's completely open source as well, because that wasn't clear before.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I didn't really see Valve stand on open source as long as they didn't have to do it, as long as they weren't legally obligated to do it because of changing GPL stuff. And here they come out progressively and say all of this is going to be open source, which is like a nice commitment to the idea, and probably most useful to everybody involved.
Yeah, I was really happy to hear that. And so Valve have also been working with the Kronos group to come up with a new open source OpenGL/OpenGLES reference compiler as well. So it's fantastic to see them contributing in that space too.
Well, this is nothing I can really comment on. Bit too specific in that respect.
Yeah, I guess the big takeaway is that Valve seem to be very serious about contributing to and being involved in moving things forward in this space. Being an active participant in the Kronos group is pretty neat. So let's give Valve a big thumbs up there.
Yeah.
The other thing that everybody had been very excited about was Valve's VR demo, which sadly there's not much in the way of coverage to come out of that. Just people talking about their individual impressions. But it sounds like they're doing some really interesting things and have some really interesting tech there.
Yeah, I kind of hated the coverage on that because everybody was focusing on the people that said it completely blows Oculus Rift out of the water, which might very well be true, but it's non-information if you don't know what kind of tech is involved, what the price tag would be if they were to bring it out, because people have to remember Oculus Rift is aiming for a below $300 consumer device, and this is Valve's purely fiddling around tech prototype from the billion-dollar company that could just throw every bit of money onto the problem they want and make everything awesome with that. So people might have had a $10,000 headset on their head, which of course, if they don't do everything wrong, will blow Oculus Rift clearly out of the water.
Yeah. And I think they've said that they're not, at this point, expecting to release any VR hardware.
Yeah, but they have shared their research and tech with Oculus.
Right.
Because even Valve themselves are expecting the Oculus Rift to be the device that actually comes out, the first one to come out. So they are supporting them.
Yeah, so that's kind of interesting to see as well. I think Gary Newman, the developer of Garry's Mod, had a interesting write-up of his experiences that didn't have too much of a comparison with regards to the Rift, and he talked more about the compulsions and urges he felt while trying it on. So there's meant to be one that's meant to instill a sense of vertigo. There are some things with moving stuff where things move towards you, and he talks about how he had kind of this unconscious urge to step out of the way as something came towards him and stuff. So it's kind of interesting to read that as well.
There was something about Valve giving out Steam boxes and Steam controllers, right?
Yeah, so I think all the attendees got one of the Gigabyte Steam machines, and I think Intel may have had a hand in funding that.
Yeah, Intel gave out these machines, it seems, like 1,200 gigabyte brick Steam machines. That's a goodie bag people would go for.
It's been pretty awesome to see developers take those home and talk about their experiences with them and playing around with them. Obviously, they're still fairly early. SteamOS itself is also still fairly early, but by giving these developers a SteamOS machine, that's going to definitely increase the likelihood of them providing SteamOS support in the future.
It's a curious name for a box, bricks, because when you kill the device, you'll always call it a brick.
Well, that just means you don't have to get used to calling it something new.
Damn, I bricked my bricks.
Or maybe it's dead on arrival.
So the in-home streaming beta is being launched. Invites have been sent out to a bunch of people.
Oh yes.
Yeah, it's been fun. I've had a chance to test it. You have as well, Swordfisher?
Yeah. I installed Ye Olde SteamOSe on my little Zotac with a 1.6 GHz Atom and an NVIDIA Ion. And it could barely play the big picture menu because of the animations in the background. But I actually managed to play some FPS games like A for the Awesome with almost no lag in a 1080p resolution. So it was quite a nice experience actually.
The first thing I tested was Worms Reloaded, which was, I mean, it's a fun game, but the port, or even on Windows, it's kind of awful. It uses a lot more in the way of resources than it probably should, and it was kind of slow and clunky for a bit. And I thought, streaming thing's a bit average. But then when I tried it out with a couple of other games, like say Assault Android Cactus, for example, I was pretty blown away by how responsive the streaming was. Still get a little bit of input lag here and there, depending upon what resource usage is like on the host machine. But I've been hugely impressed by the state of the tech at the moment. It's better than I was expecting.
I had no input lag whatsoever. I saw a couple of guys on SteamLUG and SteamDB talking about it, but I had none.
You probably have a faster host than I do.
Yeah, that's likely. And I have a okay local network set up, so I'll probably do something as well.
Yeah, have you had a chance to check it out, DerRidda? Have you received an invite?
Yeah, I have also received an invite. Seems like the last wave was a big catch almost everyone that was in the group invite. But I really didn't have any kind of experiments set up which I wanted to run. I told you I wanted to try to see if you could stream games from the same machine running Wine to the same machine, so you have it all in your native client, but after I observed your experimentation, I thought I would pass on that idea.
Yeah, I found that when if the game loses focus on the host machine, it you can't interact with it from the client anymore, so it effectively renders the host machine useless while streaming is taking place.
Which, to be fair, is precisely what Ralph said would happen, so
yeah.
No surprises here.
But so that does prove a bit of a hurdle for anybody who was hoping to run Steam in Wine and stream to their Linux client.
Though there's one thing that annoys me about it is that it starts the host machine in big picture mode every time you launch a game.
I don't get that because I was running from the Steam client to the Steam client, but you were running SteamOS, which the client was in big picture mode. Is that right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so maybe it's about trying to provide some synchronicity between the state of the client machine and the host machine, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. It's pretty annoying because I can't see anything on my on my host machine when the big picture mode launches. It's just a black screen.
Yeah. I had trouble with some games. My laptop's pretty fussy about screen modes, and there were some resolutions, particularly my favored windowed resolution, it just gave up on. It said that it couldn't connect to the host machine if it was running a particular res. But yeah, so in-home streaming looks pretty sweet. Interested to hear comments and feedback from anybody else in the community who has a chance to play around with it. I know that it needs some firewall ports opened, and I don't think I've quite identified what they are. The opening up the one that's mentioned in the knowledge base article doesn't seem to be enough. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there. Moving on, Debian developers have just recently been offered copies of all Valve's current and future games as a way of contributing back to the community. Have you guys heard about that?
Yeah, I read it on the mailing list.
Yeah, I've also heard about that, which is pretty cool, I guess, as a thank you, but I don't really see the value to the Debian project itself in there to start on a negative note already.
I have to say, I didn't expect that there would be a big response to it. One would normally assume that the kind of philosophies that would attract people to contributing to Debian wouldn't necessarily be that compatible with Steam as a DRM platform. But DirectX, who also has a hand in this, has said that that the response has been pretty positive, and people have been taking advantage of it.
Absolutely, who wouldn't? Some of the best games out there for free. Why not?
But yeah, it's nice. Obviously, this isn't the limit of contributing back that Valve have talked about doing. The company that they're working through is one of the contractors that's been helping them out with SteamOS, which is, I think it's Collabora. Is that right?
Yeah, sounds like it.
They've been trying to come up with additional ways that Valve could look at contributing back to the community. I think it's really positive to see Valve looking towards supporting upstream development and upstream developers as well. I think that's pretty positive. Steam has launched in the recent client beta a new VR mode for Big Picture, which sadly I can't get running in Linux. It does seem like it doesn't have Linux or Mac support as yet, but there doesn't seem to be much in the way of proper information available on the state of that. So hopefully we'll hear more about that soon. Moving on to gaming news stuff. What have you guys been playing recently, Swordfisher?
Yeah, I've been playing Savant Ascent, and I was quite surprised about the game because it looked a tad boring to begin with, but it got this old school feel, like an arcadey thingy to it. I don't know how you can describe the game. It's like going on an elevator ride and you have to kill things, I guess. I think that's as precise as it can be. Then I've played some Rogue Legacy still, which it's a bit repetitive in the long run, I think. Mostly because when you get to a certain level, the first part of the castle is pretty easy, but it takes some time to go through the first part of the castle to get to the forest and the harder levels. So the startup time is a bit long sometimes. But it's still fun to play though. And then I tried some different games with in-home streaming to see how that would work out. How about you, DerRidda?
Oh, I've been playing lots more Dota 2, which has given me a nice and actually totally horrible losing streak. But you just can't quit once you start playing Dota 2. And then I picked Dungeons of Dreadmore back up now that I have all the add-ons on Steam and don't have to start Azura to play it. And I must say it's still the funniest and best roguelike out there. Some hardcore rogue people would kill me for that, but it's just so nicely done, so accessible and humorous. And now that I've catched up on some more nerdy entertainment, I get more of the references in there. You always find something new and you always get killed horribly, which is super nice. And then I also played some Red Orchestra, the original, so don't people get excited again. More specifically, the Darkest Hour mod, which we had an event for before, but that didn't work out so well. And I must say, it's still pretty playable once you actually find a populated server. And I would recommend people that want a more realistic tactical shooter on Steam to not overlook Red Orchestra and Darkest Hour. So, geez, what were you up to?
I managed to find a bit of time to play some FTL over the past couple of weeks. It's been heaps of fun. As I mentioned earlier, I've been playing Broken Age. I've been playing Tokitori 2, we mentioned earlier as well. Played some Worms Reloaded. Interestingly, when we did the in-home streaming, Worms Reloaded doesn't have the cross-platform multiplayer, and I run Mac OS on my my little netbook. So it was nice to be able to run the Linux version on my netbook and be a little bit more mobile with it. Also, spent some time playing some Osmos. I haven't played that for ages. I love that game. I tested out some Strike Suit Zero. That looks pretty neat. Been playing a little bit of for the Awesome, which now has Rift support on Linux, which we'll come back to in a bit. And Surgeon Simulator, I kind of found some time to get into that and finished all of the non-ambulance or the first 3 surgeries. That's heaps of fun.
Whoa, you're skilled then.
Yeah, my first brain surgery was kind of exciting. Couldn't really work out what I was meant to be doing.
I think my main problem is that I'm always drunk when I play the game.
I think regardless of whether you're drunk, you are drunk in that game.
Yeah.
And I think it's part of the rules. You play this game when you're drunk.
Yeah, I think it's a bit like the Wii bowling you play at parties and such. And bringing up Surgeon Sim at a party is a tremendous lot of fun. Also because no one knows what they're doing, just throwing stuff around a cloth and knives in the patient and just slapping him with the broken glass, and yeah, it's all fun.
It's good. I also finished the TF2 level. It took me ages to work out that I had to use the med gun to heal the heavy.
Oh.
But thankfully blood loss seems heaps slower in that mode, so there was plenty of time to work it out. So moving on to the news stuff itself, it looks like Towerfall is looking like it might be getting a Linux release, but probably not at launch.
It's like the only thing on Ouya people are generally excited about, and now it's coming to all the other platforms as well. But I hear the PC version won't have an online multiplayer, so you have to actually cram 4 or so people locally in front of your computer.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. And Joel from Frozen Byte has posted on their Steam forums talking about how they plan to get Shadowgrounds up onto Steam for Linux, hopefully at some stage soon. But a lot of what form that's going to take is going to depend upon what resources they've got available, whether they put up the tweak the existing builds, or whether they try and get new ports made.
Yeah, I would hope the game sees some attention. I would like to finish Shadowground Survivors. And now with more modern distributions, the ports really don't run all that well anymore, if at all.
Now our good friend Flibbit has left us a message to let us know that Blueberry Garden is finally being released for Linux very, very soon. I think this weekend, maybe very early next week.
Yeah.
For anybody who doesn't know, this was the first port that he ever started, and it's kind of been hanging in limbo ever since. So it'd be great to have that out and available natively. The Tokitori that we've mentioned a couple of times, the developers, Two Tribes, have recently announced that they're calling it rebooting. They've had some financial difficulties and have had to close the studio and reopen it as a separate company. We've had assurances that they're going to continue, the publishing or the parent company that did all the publishing is intact and had no problems at all. So, we're assured that there will be availability of all of their titles. All of their Linux titles are going to continue to be available, so there's no problems there. And they've also brought back on board a number of existing staff members, but they've significantly downsized. They're apparently going to look at doing a side-scrolling shooter for their next project, which is going to use the Tokitori 2 engine. And in a conversation I had with the company's founder, they are planning to do Linux ports for all of their future games. I did a quick write-up on gamingonlinux.com if anybody wants to have a read. But so on that note, the Humble Bundle X was released and has finished since the last cast. It featured To the Moon, Joe Danger 2, Papo and Yo, which still isn't on Steam for Linux, but we have seen assurances that it's on its way. It was also an internally done Unreal Engine 3 port, which is interesting to see. Bitship Runner 2, Horde, Strike Suit Zero, as well as Tokitori 2, Reus, which is also not quite on Steam for Linux yet, I don't think, and Surgeon Simulator. You guys have a chance to play any of those Humble Bundle titles?
I've played a bit of Reus, and I must say I don't like it that much. It's a bit too... it feels kind of like a mobile game in the sense that it has a lot of timer-based, very stressing mechanics. You have very little control over the world. It's a god game where you basically do not a lot of things except please the people around you or kill them if they get you greedy. And it just doesn't have a whole lot of depth to it. So, sadly disappointed by that. But I'm totally looking forward to Papu and You, because that game got praised a lot by the press. Even though it's nothing special gameplay-wise, it's a game metaphor to the problems one of the developers had to deal with the alcoholism of his father. So there should be some meaning to that game at least, and I always look for that. And To the Moon, I have very briefly touched only, but that's also a game that has been praised a lot, and there's a lot going on. I don't know what, but that's definitely on my to-do list. Papu and You and To the Moon.
I've played Bittrip Runner 2, so Strike Suit Zero and Surgeon Sim, but that was before they all came in the bundle.
Actually, Meklu points out that Papo and Yo, in addition to being a Unreal 3 engine, it appears that it's the first native WWise title. So that's good to see that getting out in the open now. We touched on that previously, saying that the Linux version was available for people to license a couple of months ago in an earlier SteamLUG Cast. Oh, and Reus is apparently working on Steam at the moment as well.
Awesome.
I wasn't sure what the status of it was. Octodad Deadliest Catch is coming out later this month. They've made a new announcement trailer to talk about that. We're going to be seeing it on Linux at launch by the looks of things.
Yes, but we would also like to point people to the current Humble Weekly Bundle, because there are a lot of awesome games in there. It's full of Linux titles for a change, which is not normal with these weekly bundles, as we all know.
Well, it's not quite full, is it?
Only one game doesn't have a Linux version. So it's full of roguelikes, Paranautical Activity, Dungeons of Dreadmore, with all the add-ons, Hex/Loot, The Binding of Isaac plus add-on, and Teleglitch plus DLC. And Dungeons of Dreadmore plus all add-ons for $1 is definitely worth a ton. I mean, there's so much fun in that game. Untitled Glitch. It's on the beat the average, but it is definitely a different kind of roguelike. It's real time, it's action based, and a whole different beast. Some people have called it Doom means roguelikes. And it's balls hard.
Moving on, for the Awesome, as we mentioned earlier, has finally received Rift support for Linux. I got the chance to beta test that for Alchemy Labs, who worked on the Rift port, and that's now live for people in Steam for Linux. I haven't spotted it come through for Humble Bundle purchases yet, but I did record a short video and do a little write-up if anybody's interested in checking that out. Have you guys played that game much?
Yeah, I think I played an hour without the Rift though, but yeah, it was quite fun.
The Rift version doesn't feel quite so urgent, I guess. They've taken out like the camera shake and a lot of the UI and a couple of the effects just to make it so it's less likely to make people sick. But I feel, particularly with the camera shake disappearing, which did give you a sense of speed as you fell, with that missing, the game does feel heaps slower to me. But it's fun, and it's nice to have another title supporting the Rift on Linux. Clay recently announced that they have a DLC on the way for Don't Starve. Well, actually, I think it's previously been announced, but they have released a teaser trailer for it. It's going to be called Reign of the Giants. The teaser is super short and features what looks to be a super angry badger.
Everything is angry at you in Don't Starve, so I'm not surprised. Apparently
it's going to feature some fairly significant gameplay changes, and for this reason it's going to be packaged as a DLC rather than an update. People will be able to enable and disable the gameplay changes, apparently. So that'll be nice for not only people who've been playing for a long time, but also for people who want to check out something new. Moving on to Steam releases, we've had a couple of new games show up over the past fortnight. I think Galcon Legends, Lauren the Amazon Princess, Estranged Act 1, Steam Bandits Outposts, and 140. Either of you guys had a chance to check any of those out?
I managed to download Estranged because it's free for anyone with Half-Life 2, but haven't played it yet.
I've played the beta of Estranged Act 1, and it was a bit of a simple game. It's kind of nice, don't expect too much, it's definitely fun. And, well, if you are into survival horror, it's not really scary, but if you're into that kind of genre, you should check it out.
140 looks kind of neat. At first I was kind of, expecting something derivative and something that I'd seen before, but it does kind of seem like it's got some interesting, innovative, I don't know about innovative, but just some interesting gameplay that makes it show up as a title that stands on its own. I'm probably going to grab that and check it out.
It reminds me a bit of Thomas Was Alone, in some sense.
Yeah, that's what my initial expectation was, but after a bit more of a look at it, it's more dynamic and less character oriented, obviously. But it does have that kind of minimalist visual style. It's also rhythm based, so that's kind of neat too.
But it's only for the in-game audio and not your own audio?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or at least that's the impression I get. I haven't.
Yeah, I might as well grab it. Looks pretty fun.
Moving on to crowdfunding. It looks like the MIMS, which we've mentioned previously, has reached its target, which is nice to hear. It still has another couple of weeks left, I think. So if anybody's interested in that, check that out. Kingdom Come Deliverance is a crowdfunding campaign that people have been chatting about recently. It's a CryEngine title that is promising Linux support.
Yes, and boy, that looks like it could be really big. It's fantastic looking. It's not some generic old fantasy RPG. It's a pretty much realistic medieval fantasy game. Not fantasy, just no fantasy. It's just an RPG in a medieval setting, and well, it has me excited, genuinely excited. Sadly, I can't really chip in for that crowdfunding campaign right now. But the release date is far out anyway. It's quarter 4th of 2015, so probably 2016 if we are realistic.
As far as I'm aware, this is the first time we've seen anything that looks like a firm commitment for Linux support from anybody who's using CryEngine. That's pretty notable.
Yes, and so far I've checked out the CryEngine website. They don't talk about Linux support on there yet, so these people seem to be very confident. Either there's something that's not officially out there, or they say they can do it in-house easily.
But maybe they say they can do it, but we end up with a broken port or something.
Yeah, and we've seen that happen before.
In that case, we of course have to burn down their studio.
I haven't seen any proof of it running at all.
I haven't been able to get a response out of their press email address. I've tried reaching out in the past. But yeah, who knows? Fingers crossed that it's indicative of vendor-provided support.
Yeah, of course.
And on that note, I came across another crowdfunding project which also uses CryEngine 3 and is talking about, in their FAQ, they say they intend to support Linux as well. And it's called The Cradle.
Which is not to be confused with the Unigine-based Cradle adventure game. It's completely different, and they are named the same. I was totally confused when I saw that at first.
It got some amazing art, though.
Yeah, it does look great.
But yeah, that makes me... That Kickstarter, also on CryEngine, also going for Linux, makes me a lot more confident that there might be vendor support in CryEngine for Linux now.
Cradle is a little bit more vague on the Linux front than Kingdom Come, but it's kind of still supporting evidence, I guess.
It's vague on about everything. I mean, Kingdom Come has gameplay scenes in there, and Cradle is pretty much all concept art as far as I can tell from the Kickstarter.
Yeah, the pitch video looks like previous stuff as well.
Yeah. Well, if you watch the video has in-game stuff.
Also on the crowdfunding front, and Double Fine themed as well, in a couple of hours, I think it's a couple of hours, Massive Chalice team stream will be happening. That's going to be at 2200 UTC. People can check it out on Double Fine's twitch.tv website, or stream account thing. And they're going to do a kind of art-themed one where they're going to look at the visual progress and a whole bunch of concept art and stuff. So if anybody's interested in catching up with where that project's at, it's well worth a look in. Are either of you guys following Massive Chalice at all?
Nope, I'm following that even less than I followed Broken Age, to be honest. No offense, but I haven't really paid any attention to the crowdfunding campaign even.
A Massive Chalice is sort of like fantasy XCOM kind of thing, which is interesting. And they've taken a much more open approach than they have with Broken Age. So where Broken Age has some backer-only information, everything about Massive Chalice is completely public. And as Roberta Zek mentions, all the previous Steam streams that they've done, it's like a fortnightly thing. As Oliver mentioned when we talked to him earlier, all the previous archives are available on the Twitch account as well. And that exhausts the list of stuff that we were going to chat about. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think we have pretty much covered everything important. Does the chat have to yell anything at us that they think we should call out?
Not by the looks of it.
I think we're going to take that as a no.
Yes.
They're more quiet than we are.
Yeah. So on that note, we will jump across to the event channel and we will start playing some Brutal Legend. And I might reset the event and give everybody another super annoying Steam notification because we've started late. But thanks for joining us, guys, and catch you next time.
Yeah, see you guys.
See ya.